Evening, everybody. Welcome for another essential conversation here at Wellbeings. I'm here with the wonderful George, and today we're going to talk about something which is on the rise. We're going to talk about domestic violence in the home, and how this is becoming a worldwide struggle, especially during this time of COVID. So, George, welcome again, man.
Well, thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here. So I think that you have a good topic and something that I think is overlooked a little bit, domestic violence during the COVID period. So we're going to try to tackle this topic and then see what we could do.
Yeah, man, let's just start off with, whenever, this has always been a problem.
Yeah.
This has always been a problem. And I remember a long time ago, as a young fella, I saw this movie in I think it was called Once Were Warriors, and it was set in New Zealand. And it highlighted domestic violence. When I was like 6 or 7, I saw it, and my mom and dad stopped me from watching it. And it was very striking. There was alcohol involved. There was physical violence. It was very obvious. And it really impacted me. And I remember then, as I grew up in the community that I lived in, I started to hear domestic violence as a teenager happening in the neighbors' homes. And as again, it was something that wasn't spoken about. And when I would bring it to my mother's attention, or my father's attention, or my sister's attention, or just a friend, it would be like, oh, well, that's not our business.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's a big deal, but it's like often I don't think we know how to deal with that as a community.
Exactly. And it's a very tough thing, because what's happening here is domestic violence has been there for a long time. And men and women, and particularly women, because the statistics, more women are being victims of domestic violence than men, even though there's a low report when it comes to men, because the society conditioned men, if you've been experienced domestic violence, you don't report it. There's a shame that links to it. But nevertheless, there are quite a bit of men that's been also. But now with the COVID, it's been really on the rise, domestic violence. Not because of COVID, but what's happening here is now you're in confinement. Because you're in confinement, you can't go out, you can't escape. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the abusers use that, because you're in confinement, the government says you're not supposed to go out. Now they're going to use that, whether I want to protect you, I want you to stay home, and you're not supposed to be out. Now here you are, you have no way for a clean escape, and you've been really violated physically. Now, you have to understand domestic violence is not only in terms of physical. Somebody beats you, or somebody hits you, or pinch you, or whatever, slap you. Mm-hmm. These are the physical part, but you have the physical part, you have the emotional part, you have the psychological part, you have the financial part. Mm-hmm. All this also is part of domestic violence, and the sexual part also. I have somebody who asks me, well, if I'm married, can I rape my wife? Yes, you can. That's because you're or married. If you force your wife to have sex with you when she's not ready, or not, she doesn't want to have sex, that will basically sexually rape, mm-hmm. or sexually abuse your wife. So all those things has been in the rise as a result of the confinement, especially between last year and this year. It's about 300%.
So increase. I'm just impacted by that statement. So has there, I don't know about American law, but that's abusive when a man, doesn't matter if it's a husband or a boyfriend or a stranger, when you force yourself onto a woman without her consent, that is immediately an illegal offense, right?
It is, absolutely, it is. And the thing here is, a lot of times people don't think about it. I remember I was talking to a friend, as a police officer, and then he could not understand that you could actually rape your wife. For him, that, okay, I'm married to have sex, and if I want to have sex, my wife's supposed to.
Okay, so you're dealing with cultural and social contaminations.
So, and you have to understand, and sometimes they can't comprehend that, okay, yes, even if it's your wife, mm-hmm. but she's still on her body, mm-hmm. and she has the right to refuse to have sex with you if she's not feeling comfortable physically. And if she said no, and then you force yourself without her consent, that would be an abuse. and that actually happened. And the control part of it, because what's happening here, what's up with domestic violence, there's a major, component when it comes to controlling you. Doesn't want you, for example, during COVID, they will tell you, this COVID time, a certain time, I don't want to hear phones ring in the house. Mm-hmm. And there you are, you're afraid if somebody rings you. But generally, it starts very gently. Can I go out with you? Can I take you there? Can I take you here? But at one point, it's going to be like, okay, you can't go out without me. Mm-hmm. You see, and it's going to shift very quickly. And sometimes it just happened, and then, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I love you so much. I'm jealous and everything. Mm-hmm. And statistics shows most people who've been in this kind of violence, they try to escape about 7 times before they actually escape. 7 times. So it's a large number.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're talking about control in relationship, yeah. And then you're talking about how that control of the need to control when one's in confinement, and how the ghosts become more solid and real. Yeah. Whenever I find I have a few clients where I've noticed, and I've read the literature, where often we don't know how to be in a relationship with our partners sometimes. And whenever there's a sort of, what do I mean by that? Like where we could be busy all the time with work, at the weekends we're busy with our friends. Maybe we have a practical relationship where we pass each other like boats at nighttime. Maybe we're head of the school. Maybe we're in this organization, that organization. Maybe we just lose ourselves in the newspaper or maybe on our phone, and we're not actually relating. But when it comes to this sort of more sort of restricted movement, then the sort of tension comes up, or the need to control can sometimes happen as well.
Of course.
And what I found is, I spoke to a woman about 2 weeks ago, and she says, well, I couldn't leave because it would be a sign of that. It felt like it would be a failure. Yeah. It would felt like I was a failure. It would be it would be like it would be, of course, riddled with shame and guilt, and it wouldn't look right. Like it wouldn't look more or less keeping up with it. The next, it just wouldn't look good in the community to be able to. So again, it's made to be very silent.
Absolutely, and in certain culture, it's really, really hard for women to escape, for women to even divorce, even though they are, experiencing major violence, whether physical violence or sexual violence within the relationship, and sometimes religious beliefs, like you cannot divorce unless that, and there you go, you have to stay within that. And some society, women don't even have that right. Certain societies, we know that if you divorce, you'll be shunned by your own community. If your husband hits you, you must do something wrong for that to happen.
Yeah.
And you might not even have access to your own children if you do, and it's very hard in those kind of society. But in the United States, for example, but it's totally different. But the law protects women, but there are a lot of women who are really living in fear because it's very hard to escape, because one of the first things the abusers would do is to isolate you. Isolation is one of the key ones. They isolate you from anyone you love, anyone who cares about you, your friends or family. They don't want you to talk to your friends. They don't want you to talk to your family. If you are going out, they want to be there. They want to know who you talk to, when you talk to. If you go to the mall, you can't go to the mall by yourself. Maybe I'm trying to protect you. I'm on your side, but now it's a matter of control. Yeah. I'm supposed to have a baby. You're supposed to have an open relationship. You have to give me the code of your phone or your Facebook or so and so forth. I want to know who you're talking to. You have to trust me. And quickly you're gonna see that change in terms of possession, and then the abuse is going to happen. They might hit you once, and then they will come and scroll and cry and say, "Oh, baby, I'm sorry, I love you so much. I would never do that. I promise you." They're gonna do that a second time. And the statistic shows that if they hit you once, they're gonna keep on hitting you.
Wow. Yeah, I remember one of my clients talking about where it seemed, and I'll use the term nurturing partner was a very, very nurturing. And if you look at the trauma triangle, where the over-nurturing becomes the predator or the perpetrator, and it comes in as a caring sort of attribute, but at times And I suppose we're talking about this, folks, is to be able to, to maybe help you reality test where you are right now. If you are someone that might be in a relationship that just because you're supposed to love them or that you're married to them, that if violence or abuse is taking place, it's not okay. And to reality test, to check in, to see if there's this sort of control that leads to, what was that word that you used there, kind of, where they own you.
They own you, yeah, possession.
Possession, where there's a possession sort of vibe going on, where you kind of are being, where your life force is being anesthetized.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so just anybody watching, or send this to someone who you think could be of benefit, but just taking a look around and noticing your life, because if this is happening, something's not right.
Absolutely. And sometimes it happens. It started very subtly, by calling your name, for example. Yeah. Sexual names, for example, and thinking that, well, it's just fun, it's just having fun, it's just, cool. Not cool, because you're gonna see that changing very quickly.
Well, where does the sexual bad names come from? It comes from slavery, right?
Absolutely.
So all down through the years, that sort of, like heavy-handed names, sort of abusive names that may be called sex talk. Again, it may be something that people really enjoy, and I'm not saying that everybody who uses that leads to abuse. I'm not saying that, but it's something that we've seen sometimes. It's
misused.
Yeah, it can be misused.
It's misused for that purpose, and then you think that it's just okay, but you're gonna see quickly that's going to change. And sometimes, the funny thing here is, and when we talk to people who've been the battered women, or people who've been in bad relationship, they most of the time see the signs, but sometimes believe that they can change the person. I love him so much. It will change. I could change him. I could give him more affection. Maybe I should change the way I look. Maybe I should change my hair. Maybe I should change. It's just because I'm overweight. That's why he's treating me that way. And sometimes you're gonna see the abuse coming up. It might not start physically, but it might start really emotionally. For example, you know what I mean? If you look that way, then I'm gonna start seeing other women. I make you feel jealous, and these are the abuse, and this is emotional abuse.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to sleep with you. It could be both ways, whether men or women. Men could say, "Well, I don't want to sleep with you because you're too fat. You do this. You don't do this in bed. You don't do." And sometimes they might force you to do certain things sexually that you probably not ready to do it, but it's been forced upon you, and sometimes play some reverse psychology for you to accept that. And when you don't, they punish you. They punish you by not wanting to go out with you, not wanting to talk to you, not wanting to have to make love to you, and all those stuff. And there you are, you start feeling guilty, feeling that you're doing something wrong. So you really deprive from that choice of your body, of your feelings. And when you see those kind of signs, and this is when you have to be very careful. And sometimes you cannot have the response all by yourself. Please knock on doors, talk to somebody. Ask, not to diverge your own personal business, but there are ways where you could seek for information. And there are quite a bit of organizations down there. There are quite a bit of professionals down there who would be there to really help and support you.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about some of the places that you can contact later on. But I want to bring in something I think is very important. And I think it is understanding both the dynamic, understanding what has this toxic masculinity, what's birthed this, because when you got to talk about where's this coming from, and we have the Me Too movement. There's been a lot of this in the media for a long time, and without going down that particular road, just trying to understand, and then again swinging around to understand the dynamic with the woman, what's actually being reenacted, maybe possibly in that dynamic. So I'm really curious about what's your understanding of what has to have happened or what hasn't happened that's created this sort of toxicity within the masculine?
Well, there are.
I know it's very hard.
It's very hard to pinpoint, and it's very broad because you can't put your fingertips just said, this is exactly what happened for it to happen. There could be a cultural aspect of it, could be environmental aspect of it. Sometimes you are raised in an environment where you see
it, where you're mimicking the behavior, or it was done to you, and then you
exactly, and it's tolerated by your environment, and feeling that, okay, well, this is how men's supposed to be, this is how do that, and you've been reinforced by that. It could be a number of reasons that as I like the way you put that toxicity when it comes to your masculinity, feeling that, okay, for you to be a man, you have to really hit a woman, you have to do this, you have to do that, and which is totally quite the contrary. And if you didn't get away with it for a long time, then of course
it becomes a reality.
It becomes a reality. It can be your lifestyle into what you're supposed to be, and you accept that. When the thing here is, you need to be aware, whether you're a man or a woman, of those kind of signs and how to really deal with that. Because look, I love when they say, I think it's Maya Angelou that says, if somebody shows you who he or she is, believe him or believe her. Yes, if they show you from the get-go, from the dating process, you already know. They tell you who they are, just believe them. Don't think that, okay, well, there's another person behind that, because the truth is, you can't change somebody. Don't expect that you're going to do something to change that, and don't expect that things are going to change just because of that. Sometimes you find also women or in this kind of relationship hiding behind the family. Oh, well, I cannot leave him because of my child. This is the biggest excuse in my view. Why? Because that is not going to change the fact that you stay. As a matter of fact, sometimes those abusers use the children to trap you into the relationship. And believe it or not, if you're not okay, how could your child be okay?
Yeah, let's just hear that for a minute, because whether you come from a Catholic background, which I have, which is all about staying in the relationship, hail, rain, or snow, you stay in the relationship. There's other cultural sort of religious communities that really support staying in the relationship. If you are unwell and unsafe in that relationship, in that home, then so is your child.
Absolutely.
Your children grow in the space between you and your partner, like the space between me and George here. They grow in here. They feel everything that's spoken, that's not spoken. And that's the contamination that you're teaching them that is okay. And something needs to happen. If that's the reason to get you out of the relationship, to get out of the home, then that would be a good enough reason to get out. Until then, maybe later you can realize for yourself that it's not okay.
But absolutely, because I take that analogy when you get on the airplane and they tell you fasten your seatbelt.
Okay.
If there are some turbulence, you have to put your mask on first before you put your mask on your kid. Why do you think they want that? Because if you're not alive, how are you gonna save your kid?
Yeah.
If you can breathe, how are you gonna? So you have to breathe first. You have to be alive first. You have to be safe. Then you could protect your child. So it's not the other way around.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't have to hide behind this excuse to remain in a relationship that could take your life. Because the truth is, there are a lot of people that are women who actually lost their lives, or if they don't, or they almost lose their life before they could escape. As I told you earlier, statistics shows that a woman would try to escape the relationship 7 times before they actually escape. They escape, they return. They escape and return. They escape and return. About 7 times before they could finally. But a lot of people, they don't have that chance that 7 times. Sometimes they lost an eye, they lost an arm, they lost the bones, or sometimes lost their lives as a result. So you have to be very careful.
Yeah, and even so, that's physiologically. So, but for me, I even look at the losing the life force, losing the will to to engage with life. How that can be drained from the other, and so and then there's a depression that can come in.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there's sort of self-harm that can come in, and so there's all these things that can happen that are definitely flashing neon lights to say, hey, if this is happening in your life, start a conversation. speak to somebody, go to an organization. You can contact us in the links below to get any help online. If you're not in Asia, you can definitely get help in Europe or in America from us as well. But something that I'm really interested in, that I've seen from time to time, but I think it would be a good thing to explore. Like, when we're talking about women here, right? We're talking mostly about how, statistically, men also get beaten up, and also mentally, physically, and psychologically.
Yeah.
But that's just news men as the higher percentage of people who are doing this abusive behavior. So what happens if you're listening right now? And there's a likelihood that you mightn't want to listen to something like this, but let's imagine that you did. What would be something would be important for them to know?
In terms of the man?
Yeah, if there's a man there who has hit someone before, has, bullied, has controlled, has, needing to own the wife, or has just been a unkind and abusive on any of those landscapes that we talked about. What would be, because they need help too, right?
Yeah, they do need help too. And so, yeah, of course they do need help too, because obviously somebody to reach a point of hitting somebody in that split second that you hit somebody, this is my term, that you're insane. Because if you're sane, you would realize quickly that, look, I could damage somebody by just hitting that person. Mm-hmm. But not only that, what is the purpose of that kind of behavior? What is you trying to accomplish by hurting somebody, whether it's emotionally, whether it's psychologically or sexually or physically? Yep. What is the purpose of that? What is the gain? I mean, and in this one, you have the fine line between somebody who really enjoy hurting somebody,
sadistic,
or somebody who just enjoy that or get away with it. Because remember, rape, especially those kind of abuse, has a lot to do with control and power.
Yeah.
Okay. And especially if you're in a position of power, whether it's physically, whether it's financially, whether you are some kind of CEO somewhere, you could get away with it. You test yourself, you test your limit. I could get away with it. I could grab you by whatever, it's been said. So you could get away with it. So it's going to become a habit for you to do so. But now when the women don't talk about that or take it in, or out of fear, or there's something that you mentioned earlier, fear of abandonment, for example. Like, I don't want to be by myself. I don't want to be alone. I mean,
I need that job.
What's going to happen to my kid if I leave? I mean, what my family would say. My sister is very happy in her relationship. Why can't I hold a man? All of those kind of excuses. What my church would say. What my community would say. So all of those things. But the truth is, this is your life.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you are the one leaving that hell. So if you don't make that step forward, then it could be very late. It could be too late not to do this. So and sometimes it's easier said than done. But this is where you seek for help.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to, there's so many things I don't know where to start. I want to talk to right now, and I suppose let's start back with the masculinity here that you're sharing about. And one is, I think about myself. I think as you were talking there, I found myself going back to a moment in my life where I hit a man. Like, I used to fight for a living. I used to fight professionally, doing martial arts and different things like this, and then on the street at times as well. It was very promoted in my culture that would be a sign of what a man is, and sometimes you would get celebrated by the people closest to you that you did something Herculean. You took on two guys, or you really give them a black eye. And I can't help but feel in my body the same feeling that I felt, which was, I wasn't happy that I did it. I was remorseful. I was saddened. I was depressed afterwards when whenever I hit someone in my teenager life. And I suppose I was contaminated by an environment of war that, I used that outward violence to protect the part of me that was deeply insecure inside and deeply scared and lonely. And this was a wonderful sort of image I was portraying to the world. So what I'm really getting to here is just for the men out there, because let's face it, if you're enjoying it, you're not going to be listening to what we're saying too much. But for the people who have remorse afterwards, you need help with that. You really need help with that.
There's a key thing that you said when we're talking here, hiding your insecurity.
Exactly.
Your own fear. And a lot of time, it's the same thing as a bully or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a sense of insecurity also. And you feel that you have to do that to assert yourself. Hitting a woman that you feel that, okay, if I do this, I have control. I'm the man of the house.
Yeah.
But in truth, there are some sense of insecurity that you're hiding.
Yeah.
And I agree. You need to process that. You need to see somebody that can help you.
You don't do that unless there's a mountain of pain underneath. I don't care what anybody says. It doesn't matter. In my opinion, what I've seen, it's not always the fact that you have had to be abused yourself to be the abuser, but most often it is. But often you've seen abuse taking place and you learn it from either society or you learn it from your family of origin, or in some cases you model, because there's nobody to model a sort of a role model in your life, then you model from people that do that.
Absolutely. And it's very dangerous when that happens. And sometimes you could find yourself in a labyrinth and you can't escape that kind of lifestyle.
I work with a young African man from the States, and he was telling me how he got into the gang life because he said he just got in. Like, how often, if parents are listening, how much we want our kids to run in the right crowd, and how sometimes you have very little control over that, but how in some, and I in Dublin, where I lived for a while, I saw this take place where I saw 14-year-olds carrying guns and aspiring to be the older gangsters because there wasn't much outlook in the family for them. So you've been from America, you would have seen that sort of lifestyle a lot, where that violence is on the streets and then can be taken back into the home again.
But of course, there are a lot of street violence in certain areas, especially in the minority communities.
Yeah, some guys from Detroit I was working with as
absolutely,
well.
There are a lot, but these are things that also, as a society, we have a responsibility to address, and how we raise our boys.
Yeah.
How we raise our boys. What kind of model that we establish for them. How we treat them and how we teach them. The way they should behave in society. Sometimes we spend more time on television, texting, TikTok, and you just name it, and Facebooking, than really paying attention to the kids, to the young boys that you have. And sadly, there are a lot of single parents out there raising kids by themselves. Single mother or single dad.
It's not easy.
It's not an easy task to do, because sometimes at a certain age, it's too late. By the time they reach you, you're trying to help and do something, it's too late. And sometimes the misunderstanding of the kid also you could lose that child when you're trying to help because it's too late. But now, if you take it very early, spend time with your child, spend time with your child, and being able to teach them the right from wrong. And then, society will benefit from it. At a very early age, you cannot, a child exhibit some level of violence, whether towards your little sister, a little brother, you have to set those boundaries.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things, it's learned behaviors that you see exhibiting as they're getting older, they get in the family, they have the same reflex in how to treat people and how to treat their wives and their children. And a lot of times in domestic violence, not only the woman is also a victim, but kids are a victim. A lot of times they become the victims of the whole abuse. When the mom is getting hit, sometimes the kids get hit as well.
Yeah, if I got $1 for every time I heard that a child was observing or hiding in the bedroom or underneath the stairs or intervening in family violence, and it haunts you. It follows you throughout your whole life. It's like a sort of environment that washes through you and infects you, affects you for the rest of your life.
This is the toughest thing for our kids to experience.
Yeah, because how do you make sense of that? Because as you're developing in your brain, as you're developing in your sort of body, as your energy centers are coming together, and you're kind of working this whole thing out called life, and this is being displayed as a way of relating, then this then becomes a way that you relate. Either you do it towards the world, or then you turn it inward.
Absolutely.
Or both.
Absolutely.
You know. So
and there's a sense of safety as well. Because children want to feel safe. And then seeing mom and dad fighting, where they're arguing, okay? It's because remember, domestic violence is not only physical, it's also verbal, it's psychological. And sometimes when they hear those violence, it affects them. And sometimes they put it inwards, feeling that this is my fault. They live with that guilt, and it's the worst thing for kids because they don't feel safe anymore. When the kids don't feel safe, they start acting out. Okay, and when the safety nets of the family is really removed, and by violence, by domestic violence, forget it.
Do you find this when you work with children and you're seeing certain behaviors, and then you want to work with the parents, that is often the case?
Oh, absolutely, because this is one of the ways that I personally really work when it comes to when anybody refers me to children. From the get-go, from the intake, I will tell you, I'm going to spend time with you. I'm going to spend time with you as parent, because a lot of times, it's parenting. A lot of times there are a lot of things that are learned behaviors. No kid was born bad. There's no such thing. That's why this is the words that I use when I heard parents say, "Well, you'll be good or you are bad." No, that doesn't exist.
Like just for the parents out there also listening, because I'm a parent, I find it so fascinating. It's also violent. It's a violent atmosphere when you're bickering back and forth with your partner all the time. When you're like stabbing, little jibes, little boom, 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 like little like badminton back and forth, boom, boom, all day, every day, and your kid is listening to this. Like that's a sort of that incorporates psychological sort of impacting for the child, emotional, because like often the jibes are condescending or they're about taking the other person down.
And they're learning. And they're learning. This how you're gonna see that real quickly. You're gonna start losing respect for both parents, or one of them. And there's one of them is gonna be scared of, not respect. There's a big difference between fear and respect. I'll be scared of you, but they don't respect you. And there's one that you're gonna totally disrespect.
Yes, say that again, just for like. Can you outline that? Because that's very, very powerful, because most of the time when people think that parenting good is when the kids are obedient, right? And there's often fearful outbursts from aggressive, maybe assertive, I suppose that's a really good word to use. It may not be always accurate in what I'm trying to say, but where there is a sculpturing into an idea that a good kid is an obedient kid, which is often shut down and compliant and withdrawn, seen in public but not heard, and that's celebrated as a good kid. Like, what's your experience with that one?
Yeah, you see that too, because sometimes people misunderstand certain behaviors and their expectations, and sometimes people tend to instill fear in their kids, thinking that, okay, this is the right way to go. But you're gonna see that real quickly. The moment the kid stops fearing you, all hell breaks loose. This is it, you lose.
And is there a stage?
And they will reach the point where they're not scared of you anymore.
Well, there's a normal stage, let's say, at many stages through the development of a child, there's individualization, right? Where there's a healthy kickback. Right. So when you have a healthy kickback and a sort of rebelliousness to the fear, then you got something that can really create a rupture there.
You get that right.
Yeah,
absolutely. You have they're gonna be very positional. They're gonna be really questioning your authority. You lose that authority, that respect that you want. Because the thing here is, as I mentioned earlier, there's a big difference between respect and fear. Because a child would be scared of doing something when you're not here because they're scared. If I do that, that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But respect is, I'm doing this whether mom and dad is not here because I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect mom.
That's a different energy, right?
Huge. So because what you want your kid to respect you, not to be scared of you. Because if it's scared, they're gonna move with fear all the time. But they're also gonna resist that fear, and they're gonna reach a point where the fear is going to be removed. And once the fear is removed, we're gonna see how much they don't respect you.
Yeah, you're gonna see that child who's just gonna be.
You're not gonna even recognize that.
Yeah, that's delinquency in a way. That's when they go really. It's like there's an adaptation, right? There's an adaptive child that is developed. And then eventually, all the things that the adaptation is holding down is just going to mushroom up.
Yeah, mushroom up. He's gonna burst big time, and you're gonna lose that kid. And I've seen that all the times, particularly in the U.S., where some parents were trying to instill some level of fear, and that has to do a lot with some culture, et cetera, et cetera. But by the time the kid 17, 18, forget it, they lose the kid.
Yeah.
They lose the kid, and everything that you used to do in terms of fear, now you're the one being scared.
Yeah.
Because they would scare you up. Yeah, so what you want at a very early age to establish some level of respect, not so much respect for your kids. And respect, then it goes both ways. You know, you respect the child as a person, and the child respects you as an adult. Yeah. That you are. And when you instill that respect, this is when you start. And that's also gonna stay with the kid until they are adults. Because listen, you cannot give something you don't have. You give what you have. A lot of times, you know, you are in a relationship, those violent relationship. This is something maybe you learned. This is how you've seen. I hate, you know, and I use that word really heavily. I hate the domestic violence. I hate seeing a man hitting a woman. I hate seeing that. If I were to be the judge, I would have been really, really tough on domestic violence or child sexual abuse. The reason why, because growing up, I used to see those kind of violence in my neighborhood. I've seen men hitting women. I've seen my neighbors beating his wife. I've seen this over and over. And as a kid, I used to be scared. I used to be scared and seeing that, and my little heart was racing, you know. But you know what? This is the extremes. Here I am now hating this, but you know what? Some kids may have been loving it. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Imagine that a kid has been exposed to that. Now it's been conditioned as the normal way of being.
Exactly. It's like it's something. You know, it's something. It's like when you got nothing, when you're starving, like, and that's what you get, then that's what you know is intimacy. That's the struggle, right? That's
the struggle. And you know, the funny thing here, sometimes you find, and it's very sad to see, the person who's been abused sometimes is absorbing and accepting that matter of fact as if it's normal. I had a case with the person where said, "Oh, my husband, but he loves me. He hits me because he loves me." Okay. And we have the best makeup sex after we have that argument after he hits me.
Well, I think it's okay to have arguments. It's kind of a healthy enough thing, but we're talking about when it's violent and when it's consistent and when it's psychological and emotional and sort of relational, like abuse taking place. It's not okay.
It's not
okay. No matter how good the sex is, it's not okay.
It's not okay in any way. However you look at it, it's just not okay. You know, and you know, people are not supposed to be hit. People are not supposed to be hurt. And then I don't think that love has anything to do with hurting somebody. And you cannot say you just hit somebody with your hands and I said, I love you because I hate you. That doesn't make any sense. If you love me that much, you hit me, then you really need to see somebody very, very, very quickly because something is really wrong with you.
Yeah, man. And I love how this is expanding just from domestic violence into an environmental issue within the home where everyone is impacted by sort of that sort of psychological, physical, relational, behavioral sort of unhealthy, violent behavior. And it's about, so that's, I feel that I'm trying to step back even further and look at this and really try to understand, what do we do about it?
Well, first off, you have to understand that domestic
these
violence.
Big questions,
yeah, I mean, so you use question. The first thing that came to mind is, this is a crime. Sometimes we lose sight of that. Yeah. Okay, hitting somebody forcing yourself into somebody, rape, abuse, these are crimes. And if your partner press charge, you will go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Period. That's the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing here is don't stay in any relationship that cause you harm physically, psychologically, emotionally, or sexually or financially. Now, I said don't stay, but this is easy to say.
Yeah, man.
Because somebody's listening and say, well, George, you're not in there. This is easy to say. I know it's not easy. This is where you understand the signs, because when the sign of control is there, the isolations come inside. Exactly. There, you're going to start planning your escape. You're going to start talking to people, reaching out to people. I don't know, maybe somebody in your church you trust, maybe a friend that you trust, or a family you trust, or some organization that you could call anonymously, and then they would reach out to you. There are many ways. There are hotlines, but plan and make sure that you escape the place that you are in. There is no excuse. There is no excuse whatsoever to experience consistent hurt, abuse, violence, physical violence, sexual violence, and there are ways they deal with it, and they will give you example on how each part they use those kind of abuses, whether it's physical, whether it's psychological, or emotional, what they do to do that. I mean, demeaning you, telling you bad words, and you would never be nothing, you stupid. These are emotional abuse, Let
me tell you, for the audience, I'm working with a client at the moment. I won't mention any names, and I'll it's an older woman. She's been in a relationship for 25 years, and the man is constantly being in infidelity. He would watch pornographic stuff on the TV in front of everybody and banish everybody from the room. Any sort of communication is abusive. He continually demeans the woman and demeans the children. And it's so difficult for this woman to leave, because she, up until getting therapeutic support, thought that she could change him, right? Thought that her love would be enough to make him see and shift, and the relationship was really only really sexual, and that was when he wanted it. So this went on for 25 years.
Wow.
And she's in this moment of time of taking those steps towards getting out of the house. She has 4 children. Wow. And they're all young. So it's a huge step towards, and I have to really also honor, and I think you're alluding to this as well, George, is this, it's a huge undertaking to be able to summon that courage to make that move.
It is. It's not easy. As I said, it's not really easy to make that move. But that move is necessary.
Yeah.
It's necessary for your own life and for the life of the kid that you care about.
Exactly.
Okay? Don't make that mistake thinking that, okay, I'm staying for the kids. You would be dead for the kid. Yeah. And now the kid's going to pay the real consequences. You see, as hard as it could be, it's necessary. And then sometimes the fear is most likely linked to the unknown, because you get used to a way of living and the ritualistic, and you don't know if you leave at your age what's going to happen. Maybe you would never get married. Maybe you would never. Well, you won't know until you make the first step. And I promise you, once you make the first step, this is all that matters. You're going to see how things are going to fall in place. Well, not to say that, okay, everything's going to be rosy out there, but your life will be saved.
Well, and again, what I hear this a lot is that the abuse will put up with 1% of something they know and can hold on to, and dismiss the 99% of the abusive behavior. Something's better than nothing. Maybe that's the fact that the abuser might look after the kids and give you a break, where there's so much busyness that you can't see what a life would be like if you were all by yourself taking care of the family. So there's these sort of practical things, but it's also delusional because of the sort of overwhelm of the emotions and the attachments.
Absolutely, because sometimes the abusers are very smart. They're very smart, and you could become emotionally attached to that person. You could be financially attached to that person. Let's say that you come here an immigrant and you're living somewhere, let's say in the US, for example, and then you don't have papers. A lot of times, I know cases like that. You don't have papers, you can't go out, and the person just like took your passport. You can't escape. You can't go anywhere. And then they would threaten you, say that, well, if you do anything, I'm going to call immigration on your part. But let me tell you something. It's news for you. This is news for people to understand. And listen to this. If you are in a relationship, that let's say that you have any papers, you're illegal in the United States, you go and report the abuse, they will not deport you. Period.
Okay, that's nice.
That has nothing to do with immigration. That has nothing to do. And as a matter of fact, it could be even more beneficial to you. So I'm not going to give you to all the extent, but all I could guarantee you, if you are in an abusive relationship, even though you are illegal in the United States of America, they will not deport you because you report yourself being abused. Period. That's the news. So don't be afraid of reporting this, and don't be afraid just because you don't have papers, you're illegal, or once you get out there and report your abuse, that ICE cannot take you and send you home. Not true. That's not going to happen.
That's great that happens in the States, man. That's really amazing.
Definitely.
And when we're getting pumped here talking about this. It's like, we're both very passionate about this because it's really nice to stop the suffering. It's really about stopping the suffering, and it's about really information. It's about education, and it's about really understanding of course, from looking into the family group, is that we keep it as healthy as we can, and we understand that. So listening to these sorts of podcasts, going to workshops, talking to a therapist, then you start to understand yourself a little bit. Then you can start to be connected with yourself more, and then you can see a little bit more clearly what's happening in the home, or also what's happening in your relationship. Maybe that's not okay. And again, this is another thing I want to reiterate, is that sometimes, because it's what we saw when we were younger, and when it's happening with our partner, and this is what I hear every single time, is that that's just what it means to be in a long-term relationship. This is what happens. It's normal that they would shout and demean you and put you down. It's normal that sometimes they hit you. It's just because they're angry. There's a sort of normalization of abuse, and I see abuse as just being a type of behavior, or like a trauma hidden by a type of behavior, for sure. But the real thing here is just to know that, of course, we all can see things from me included, and all therapists, everybody. We can't see everything clearly. We all need help, and it's really nice that when we go for that help, that to know that you will see more clearly what is actually happening. But mostly you'll understand you, then you'll understand your relationships with your partner and your children, and then you'll be able to be informed to make some choices that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do.
Absolutely, and there are a lot of resources out there, believe it or not. There are a lot of resources out there for battered women.
Well, I know in Northern Ireland, in the UK, we have Samaritans, which is, and I'm sure there's a lot more organizations that's out there. What are the organizations in the States, the hotlines? Or
there are some hotlines that is not on the top of my head, but you know what? I have quite a bit of them on my website. If you go on waldenaction.org, and you click
say that again.
wordandaction.org, and you go to resources. There are quite a bit of numbers here you could call, and then you could find the support that you need, and this number directly that you call, and where I could personally lead you to some more resources that you would need, but there are a lot of hotlines also that you could deal with. I didn't have them right in front of me here, but if you go on that website, www.wordandaction.org, you click on resources. There are a lot of numbers here for you.
Nice, and so we covered a lot today. We covered sort of the understanding the abuse of the masculine, toxic masculinity. And just understand, and we looked at the children and the impact in that. And I think I think it's important to really bring in this dynamic with the feminine, where this is happening. Why is this happening sometimes to some women and not happening to other women? I know it of course can be unfortunate coincidence, or can it be an unfortunate coincidence? Like, what's the dynamic here where this plays out?
No, I don't think it has to do with any the kind of women. I don't think it has anything to do with it. It's happened. It more has to do with the kind of men that you dealt with.
Well, that's the orientation of the woman. Again, it's what the woman saw growing up, possibly. It's what
not what the woman saw growing up. It's about what the man, because the victim is the woman. The victim, you cannot victimize the victim.
No.
The victim is the woman. So the point here is the kind of man that you choose, okay, or that around you. And sometimes you find, and it's a good point you put, sometimes you might find women who have been exposed to domestic violence.
That's what I was, yeah.
This way I know that's why you're exposed to domestic violence and happen to be attracted by those rough men.
Yeah.
Okay? Thinking that, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. My mom went through it. My sister went through it.
My granny, my auntie.
And are we attracted with rough men? We're attracted with bad boys, for example, or good. And you heard this saying that, nice women attracted to bad boys. And that could be very detrimental, when you look at it. And when you find yourself in that situation, if you find yourself in that situation, you know that this is not normal. Because at the end of the day, you're going to reach a point where you might lose something, and it could be your life. If you have a kid, what kind of education you're going to have to give these kids? You're going to tell your daughter it's okay to be hit by a man because you've been hit by a man.
Yeah.
You're going to tell your son it's okay to hit a woman just because a man hit you. And also, mind you, this one thing that we don't want to leave behind. Those domestic violence happened also in homosexual or partners in the same sex relationship. Particularly in the COVID, I was reading this earlier in articles where there are in the LGBTQ community where domestic violence has been really, really rampant during the COVID-19 because of the stress related to financing, and they can't go out, they have to stay there, and then that's really spiral, and then that's really mushroomed. And it does happen too. It's not only in heterosexual relationship it happens, it's also happening in the LGBT community, and it's a very hard thing to see.
Yeah, it's like you can't escape it. If there's stuff there that's unresolved, you put them in a pressure cooker, the pressure will come, the trouble will come. And again, if you're troubled, if you're in any part of an environment where you're a teenager observing what's happening and stuck, if you're the victim being a woman or a man and you're feeling stuck, if you're an emerging consciousness in the abuser that knows that maybe this is not okay to continue to do this and I need support, it starts with a conversation. It might start with reaching out, as we keep reiterating. Look at your community, where the areas are, where the hotlines are, where the support groups are. We have, you can contact us. We do have a directory of therapists who work specifically in this area. But again, the main thing here is about having a conversation. It's about starting to talk about what you keep hidden behind those closed doors.
And also, don't be afraid of taking the step and escape sometimes. And what's happening, and that's what I've been reading in the research that I had before the show, it's what's happening during the confinement, during the when the COVID started, and then people stay in, and it was very difficult for those victims to escape because they cannot leave home. The government told them to stay there.
You got to stay in,
and they have to stay in, and the abusers use that, okay, to keep them in. And leave that abuse over and over and over until the lockdown is over. Yeah. So now it's really, you can imagine, and I hope people are listening, those stakeholders, those people making the decisions, there's a really major increase of domestic violence during the confinement, during the COVID-19 era, where 300% increase in the United States, around the world. So it's really major, and there are different states in the United States where that happens, in other cities in the world and in the great capitals. It's happening now. There are decisions that's supposed to be made when it comes to. There are ways that they have to really think of, ways to save those people who are in this kind of situation where they could lose their lives.
Yeah, it's I often think about, like, I look at it. I was just having a conversation there last night with being able to, open up a sort of organization in the fitness community to be able to have mental health resources to help people dealing with the struggles that are hidden behind the physiques and the body beautifuls that are evident in that industry. But I also was thinking today as well, is like what's actually needed here to be able to help people in homes when there's struggles, like and again, like, what else can we do? It really starts with conversations first of all, and for governmental officials, of course, a change in legislation and a sort of a broader, taking off the blinkers to look at the sort of deeper social, sort of relational, behavioral aspects of confinement for a nation, and how people, when control is taken away, what happens.
Yeah, and now there are people that are talking about the pandemic, the unseen pandemic of abuse. Yeah, because it's happening so much that it becomes like a pandemic around the world, where men or women, particularly women, are being really, and domestic violence has been really, really rampant. In different communities, different homes, and those decisions when stakeholders and governments and making them, you have to really be conscious about it, because there is something, while we're trying to help people, we're trying to fix a problem. Now we may be creating another one that is even greater than what we're trying to tackle.
Yeah, I knew this was an issue, but you're really making it very clear, just to the level of where now there's a new violent pandemic.
It is. This has been quoted now because it's been happening so much, and it hasn't been addressed. And now there are researchers there, and then if you look at the reports and the phone calls of report of abuse, and it's really shifted in a very, very, very high way. And it's this as well as child sexual abuse, but now today we're talking about domestic violence. It's really been in the rise, and it's something that we have to look at, because there are people out there that are really suffering, and they're suffering in silence. They have no way to escape. They live with the abusers day in and day out. This is not a good position to be, and some of them have dealing with a lot of depression, anxiety, and fear as a result. And on top of it, the fear of being sick with the COVID. So you can imagine what's happening. And then the financial aspect of it as well. That's why you have a lot of suicidal happening. And these are very, very real issues that we sometimes overlook while we're just thinking about, okay, the COVID, the vaccine, want to go out and chill. But there are a group of people that are really, really dealing and struggling with this aspect of their lives and related to COVID. COVID didn't come with the violence, but it's been exacerbated as a result.
Exactly. And wow, man, and I was just reading some other articles today around the suicidal rates at the moment are through the roof. I just looked in the UK, and it's up like 40% or something like that in the last year.
It is.
And also, if you can imagine, if we look at suicide, although there's lots of different parameters that we can look at, but if you look at a failed family unit due to domestic violence, and I don't know if this research is done yet, but I've seen it in my own clinic, as I have a small clinic, is whenever the environment fails, then it is off. I have seen it linked to suicide, where there's no real support. There may be a house over their head, or a roof over their head in the house, and food on the table, but there's no real connection, or there's a distance between the parents connecting with the child, because the parents are having struggles within their own relationship with themselves and the dynamic. So I don't know, have you come across any literature in relation to like when the environments fail, there's a higher probability of suicide?
Sometimes it does happen. So and in society, it's been resulted as it's the result of several different things. And of course, there are people that are prone to suicide. There are people that are more resilient. And if you're already prone for suicide, and now you have all the stressors coming up in your life, chances are that you might act on your suicidal ideations, and then it could happen. And I know a lot of people really struggling financially right now, and people are losing their business, and there are no return when it comes to it. In the minority communities, it's been really, really harsh on us. So it's really, really, really hard, and the suicidal rate is really, really high when it comes to it. Now you have suicidal rate, you have the fear of the pandemic, and now on top of it, now you have violent domestic violence. This is really a thing society needs to really pay attention to and address, because should we omit that, it would be very devastating in the years to come.
So this is something that we could work on now. This is something that now we're noticing an increase of, and it's not just this part of the world, or it's not just that community. It's every community, and it's every culture. And so the real thing here is, as we're coming to the end, everybody here today, I think we could even have a whole talk on suicide. Absolutely. Because that's a huge deal.
It's huge.
That's also in underneath this umbrella. But again, if you have a struggle in your home, or if you know another person, let them see this video, or at least invite them to have a talk with them. I know in communities we often like to keep silent when we see stuff and then just kind of gossip about it. But if you're seeing stuff that's not okay, if you're hearing that child screaming, or you're hearing that woman screaming, or you're hearing that man, like, if you're hearing stuff that's not okay in another person, like have a conversation with them. Or like sometimes, I know it's not the coolest thing to do in the community, call family services. If like somebody needs to intervene here, sometimes the person can't do it because they're so swamped in it themselves.
Still scared, they fear.
It's really hard. And so just really honoring the struggle of what it takes to step out of a sort of a fixated sort of style of living where you're shut down and putting up with this for years. It's very hard to step out. But as George said, staying in it is causing more damage than coming out. And sometimes it may start with a conversation with somebody that gives you the courage to be able to go to an organization or to go to a therapist. So for me, being from Northern Ireland, a huge Catholic world that I was brought up in, and I saw this as I lived in Northern Ireland and in Dublin. I saw a lot of violence taking place in the home, and it's something which I didn't know how to deal with back then. And I suppose if I could have heard what I'm saying right now, speak to somebody, reach out, intervene if it's a friend. But the main thing is you can't do this by yourself.
Absolutely. You said it all. You said it all. Didn't anything to add, arm yourself with courage. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but it's necessary. As fearful it could be, as scary as it could be, it's necessary. Because if you're not okay, nobody around you can be okay. Your kids cannot be okay. You really need to take that step. And sometimes during those confinements can be very hard. But whenever you have a chance to escape, make a clear escape. Get yourself out of there. Save yourself, and then you could save anybody else around you.
Yeah, wow. Like I love that. If you're not okay, the family's not okay. The kids are not okay. So you got to take care of yourself. You got to make that step. You're worth it. You matter. You always mattered. You matter to have a life better than this. You deserve that, So if you're not okay, your family's not okay. So please find the strength to reach out and chat to somebody. What's the name of the website again?
It's www.wordandaction.org. Word, W-O-R-D, and action is A-N-D, action, ACTION.org. And click on resources. There are quite a bit of numbers here. www.wordandaction.org.
Awesome. And again, thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. I know this is a big subject. It's a heavy subject. And again, this is what we're all about. We're about having essential conversations about things to help people deal with the mental health issues in your home, in the community, in our society. So thank you for tuning in. We're back here same time next week. It's a real honor to be of service. It's really, and for the people who keep showing up or watching our videos, it's a real honor. Please please share or subscribe so maybe somebody else could get some benefit as well. So take care. Reach out, and again, from my heart and from George's, you matter, and make the appropriate moves to promote that you matter. Take care now.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you, my man.